Hi, my name is Ryan Kerr. My partner is Paige Prochniak. We're here today to talk to you about corporate culture and how that affects the organizational structure in many different aspects. Interclass organizational theory and design is very important to realize that there's qualitative and quantitative aspects that contribute to a company's success or whether they meet their demise. The one thing that we were very excited to talk about in our paper, and now also to you right now, is corporate culture. We're going to go through several different things. We're just going to tell you them right now, just a little bit of introduction for you. The first thing that we're going to talk about is what exactly is corporate culture, because a lot of times it's difficult to think of whether or not corporate culture can be one thing or another. It can be something that is very ambiguous and is something that you don't have a good grasp on. So we want to make sure that before we start talking about how corporate culture affects different areas of business and globally, we have to first determine what it actually is. The second thing we want to talk about is how corporate culture affects productivity. This is obviously something that's very important that we want to know, so when we go into the business marketplace that we can ensure that our corporate culture lines up with something that's going to be improving performance for the company. And the second thing we want to talk about, how a corporate culture meshes with a certain national culture. And from that, we're going to be able to learn how to, when we go on a global scale and we do if we're able to do in the future, go work in a different country, how to ensure that their corporate culture in that company lines up with the workers that we're working with in order to make sure efficiency is maximized. And the last thing we're going to talk about is organizational structure and how it affects corporate culture. So we want to give you a little bit of a definition or a framework of what to base corporate culture off of. In this video, the rest of the video in our paper, we go into how corporate culture affects the national culture and how national culture affects the corporate culture, and also how corporate culture affects the productivity and the performance of a company, and also as well as the natural culture. But to give you more of a idea of exactly what corporate culture is, the Hofstede study we're talking about a little bit later is one of the first research done on corporate culture. That was done in 1965, but predominantly from research that the last 20 years has really picked up as companies really started to seem to notice that corporate culture really does affect the way that they operate business and their profitability and the efficiency of their employees, and many other great benefits. The best definition that we could find, there's a couple different ones that we talked about in our paper. The one we want to talk to you guys about right now is basically it boils into the values, beliefs, and the norms of a company. Values is something that the management and the company can kind of instill on its employees, something that it is able to, but usually by guidelines, by policies, by rewards, to be able to kind of instill values, whether it be ethical conduct, or but making sure there's a whole bunch of accountability in the company, or promoting customer service by rewarding their employees by doing good things or hitting certain sales goals, or going above and beyond what they're doing in their evaluations, or reward programs like that. The second thing is the beliefs. This kind of feeds in from the national culture, whether it be the religion, whether it be rituals, or things that they do in the culture that would kind of bring a certain belief into, whether it's an ethical country with a high morality, whether it's a very religious country where they already bring in beliefs that they already believe in, that can also contribute to the way the corporate culture is founded. And the last thing is the norms. This kind of talks about the Hofstede chart, where it talks about power distance and individual versus more community-based, and how to be able to motivate your employees and how to be able to do things like that to be able to reward them, and the best ways to do that. It's very important to be able to know the values, the beliefs, and the norms to go into what a corporate culture truly is.
Corporate culture, leadership, and productivity all kind of go together because leadership plays a crucial role in creating and maintaining an environment in the company that is change-oriented for the culture. And the main ways that you can show that you're willing to do changes through the organization when you're a new leader is show appreciation to the employees, create strong bonds with the existing employees, and then keep everyone focused on the mission and vision that the company already has. And then with corporate culture and productivity, that is known to be one of the driving factors of successful projects in a company. And so when you're doing anything that involves a project and you're in a team-based environment, having a strong corporate culture is going to help you to succeed and be more productive in the company. And the same goes for just doing day-to-day activities and working with other employees. Corporate culture and the national culture are very similar to each other. The national culture and the business can be influenced by it, and it influences strategic decisions, leadership styles, and HR practices, which are just like performance appraisals. And then corporate culture and the business are impacted by employees feeling more accepted when the corporate culture lines up with the national culture and what it believes, and they feel more at home in the company. And then there's two main studies that have been conducted over the years about corporate culture, and that's Geert Hofstede and the GLOBE study, which is Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. And so for Hofstede, he found that there are 4 key cultural dimensions when you are going into an organization, and that these dimensions are influenced by the national culture that the company is located in. And these are just power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism versus collectivism, and masculinity versus femininity. So for power distance, like the United States is a very low power distance country, and Japan is a very high power distance country. So their CEO is going to have a lot more say in what's going on in the company than a middle-level manager. Whereas in America, a middle-level manager can make a decision regarding a project or something that isn't as important, and the CEO will be like, yeah, that's fine that you did that. And then the individualism versus collectivism, that is just the society that the company has in it, which would be like a collective culture is more team-based, they're very cooperative with each other, and an individualistic culture has more detailed instructions when you're doing a project. The managers are going to be right on you, making sure that you're doing everything exactly how they want you to. And then masculinity versus femininity is just how the management style is. If it's more goal-oriented, it's going to be masculine, and if it's more laid back, it's going to be feminine. And then uncertainty avoidance is just if you're risk adverse or not. So like in the United States, we tend to take risks with our businesses. In Japan, they're not going to take as many risks because they're not wanting to lose their company. And then the GLOBE study is just how they like expanded on Hofstede, and they found key cultural dimensions that are 6 instead of 4. And those are just charismatic or value-based leadership, team-oriented leadership, humane-based leadership, participative leadership, autonomous leadership, and self-protective leadership. And those kind of line up with the ones that Hofstede found. And they found in the GLOBE study that the culture is going to be across cross-cultural, and it's also going to be globally. So the culture that you are experiencing now can also be brought into countries across the world, and it's going to be more autonomous instead of very different.
The last main point we want to talk to you about is how organizational structure affects corporate culture, but also how corporate culture can affect organizational structure and profitability. When you look at a company, when they're coming from the beginning, a lot of research has been done into companies thinking when they're beginning their company, or they're coming right out of conception, that so the companies are putting a lot of thought now, which is strategic values, and not placing that same amount of emphasis and weight on the priority list of their mission and their vision statement. What kind of corporate culture do you want to cultivate, and how organizational structure affects that? 2 practical examples that we can talk about real quick is how a vertical integration, a very vertical company where they have, whether it be the CEO, then there's a bunch of different levels down to the bottom line employee. This can promote a corporate culture where someone doesn't feel valued. This could breed that. If the company does do it well, this obviously can be corrected, but for a more flat structure where there's little distance between the top and the bottom employee, this can be more adaptable companies, more companies that can evolve with the industry and with things that the workers, if they're highly educated, they can pick out issues and problems with the company, or capitalize on things that they're doing well or trends in the market that they notice. Those are just 2 quick things that really factor into corporate culture and organizational structure are linked. And the last thing we want to talk about is During times of organizational structural change and restructuring, a corporate culture can be severely impacted by that in a positive or negative way. If a company, for instance, has a very strong corporate culture of hard working and the company rewards people when they're doing well and everyone knows where they stand and they believe in the company, this can affect the company very positively as they go through restructuring, because the employees know through the culture that the company, that they have trust, that they believe management knows what they're doing, and that the company restructure will benefit them and not be negative thing. Reversely, this could also be a negative thing if the corporate culture is not strong and it's not ethically sound, that some employees might be very worried during times of restructuring, as they could be worrying for their jobs. These are just a couple quick things on organizational structure and corporate culture and how they are very intertwined. In conclusion, we talked about corporate culture, and the first thing we talked about was a definition of corporate culture, where it goes through the values, the beliefs, and the norms, and how this impacts the profitability and the performance of some employees, and came to give us a framework of what we talked about later in the video. The second thing that we talked about was the productivity and how this is affected by corporate culture, whether it's how the rewards are distributed through the employees, and how the organization's productivity and performance are linked to corporate culture. The third thing we talked about was how national culture and the Hofstede charts give a good idea for an organization of how to shape their corporate culture and the organizational structure to be the most efficient and the best way possible. And the last thing that we talked about is how organizational structure and corporate culture are linked, and how the organizational structure can contribute to the way that a corporate culture is formed, and also how corporate culture can contribute to the way the organizational structure should be formed, and in times of transition, how it can extremely impact the way that is either negatively or positively through that transition. We want to thank you for listening to our video. We hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Have a great day.